Imagine, for a moment, what it means to harvest and process more than 10,542 tons of cabbage per month. It's an impressive number, but for those who are part of this reality, it represents much more than a production metric. It represents long journeys under the scorching sun and also under persistent rain. It represents difficult decisions, sleepless nights analyzing reports, and cold early mornings planting. It represents a commitment to nutrition, flavor, and the future. Because each cabbage harvested there carries not only fiber and nutrients, but also stories, choices, and the determination to do things differently. The cycle starts small, almost invisible to the eye. A seed, so tiny that it could go unnoticed were it not for its transformative potential. It contains a universe of possibilities. But for this seed to fulfill its destiny, the work begins long before it touches the ground. Today, the seed selection process is a true precision engineering. Modern farmers do not rely solely on intuitive knowledge passed down from generation to generation. They have at their disposal genetic banks, plant DNA analyses, climate simulations, soil modeling, and even artificial intelligence. Everything is analyzed: pest resistance, adaptation to specific soil types, growth cycle, nutrient density. Each variety planted is strategically designed to respond to the challenges of its region and time. In this field of the future, what was previously done with a keen eye and lived experience is now complemented by cutting-edge technology. And it's not about replacing humans, but about enhancing them. Drones fly over the plantation daily, mapping centimeter by centimeter of the cultivated areas. Their cameras capture details invisible to the naked eye. A slight change in leaf color could indicate a lack of nutrients or an imminent pest attack. Sensors buried in the ground, invisible to passers-by, work day and night. They measure temperature, humidity, salinity, and chemical composition in real time. All this information is transmitted to a command center, which resembles a spaceship control room more than a traditional farm. It is there, in front of multiple screens and graphs, that fundamental decisions are made. When to irrigate, where to fertilize, which area needs immediate attention, and, most importantly, when to harvest. Harvest time is sacred, as it defines not only the quality of the food, but also its flavor, durability, and nutritional value. Harvesting cabbage, for example, requires surgical precision. Too early, and it will be too green, with a bitter taste. Too late, and it will lose texture, consistency, and market value. The ideal window is narrow, and only those who know the plant's cycle in depth, combined with real-time data support, are able to make the most of it. But there is something that technology, no matter how advanced it may be, will never be able to replace: feeling. The bond between the producer and his land, between the hand that plants and the food that grows. It is this invisible but very strong bond that keeps the essence of agriculture alive. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much we talk about sensors, algorithms, and automation, we are talking about food, something that will nourish a child, support a worker, feed a family. We are talking about dignity, health, the future. Cabbage, which many see as a simple vegetable, gains the status of protagonist here. It is the symbol of a new era, a time when producing on a large scale does not mean destroying nature, but rather dialoguing with it. A time when technological innovation goes hand in hand with sustainable practices, with respect for the environment and the health of those who consume and those who produce. It is this balance that makes this farm something special. It is not just a place where food is mass-produced. It is a space where lives are cultivated, where dreams sprout from the earth, where food is treated with the respect it deserves. As the day progresses and the sun reaches its peak, the work continues. Machines harvest, workers pack, trucks load. But at each stage, there is always a watchful eye, an experienced hand, a decision made based not only on numbers, but on values. Each box of cabbage that leaves there carries with it a part of this story, a story that does not end on the supermarket shelf or on the plate served at the table. On the contrary, it continues in each meal prepared with care, in each family that finds flavor and nutrition there. And so day after day, harvest after harvest, This farm writes its chapter in a larger book, that of food security. Because feeding thousands of people is not just a logistical or technological challenge. It is a moral responsibility. It is a commitment to the present and to the future. It is knowing that behind every piece of data, there is a human being. Behind every ton, there are stories, smiles, lives. And it all begins there, in the sacred silence of the early mornings in the countryside, when the first steps cross the still sleeping fields, and the sound of the hoe cutting the earth echoes like a hymn of hope. Because as long as there is someone willing to plant, care for, and harvest with love, there will be food. And where there is food, there is life. In the beating heart of a farm that never sleeps, between the perfect furrows of earth and the fresh smell of freshly harvested vegetables, there is a discreet space, almost invisible to the eyes of those who pass by the fields. It is a small, simple-looking room, but it holds something extraordinary. In it, the air conditioning maintains a constant temperature, and the walls are lined with colorful screens, vivid graphics, interactive maps, and data that are updated every second. There, you don't hear the lowing of oxen or the roar of tractors, but rather the soft hum of machines and the constant click of keys typed with precision. It is the digital brain of the farm, a kind of control tower where the field is understood not only by the accumulated experience of generations, but also by the in-depth analysis of algorithms and artificial intelligence. In this high-tech space, what was previously felt in the skin, in the bones, in the smell of the air, or in the behavior of birds, can now also be seen in real time, with an accuracy that impresses even the most skeptical. The main software, a true artificial mind trained to understand the secrets of the earth, combines information from the sky and the ground, satellite images, climate forecasts, data from weather stations, historical records of previous harvests, agronomic reports, and even sensors that measure the behavior of plants day after day. With this, it can predict with impressive accuracy the ideal time to harvest, neither before nor after, exactly when the cabbage reaches its peak in flavor, nutrients, and texture. But despite all this sophistication, there is one thing that remains unchanged: the value of the human eye. Because as much as technology sees patterns, it still does not understand feelings. And it is in the farmer's touch, in that simple gesture of running his fingers through the leaves, that ancient wisdom resides. It is he who, with his heart connected to the earth, perceives what no machine can calculate. The subtle color of the stem, the slightly different smell of the morning, the sound the plant makes when touched. All of this is information that is not in the systems, but in the human senses. That is why, even at the center of this modern machinery, the farmer remains essential, like an invisible conductor who directs this symphony between nature and machine. When the big moment finally arrives, the one that has been carefully planned, measured, and analyzed, the farm enters a frenzy that looks more like the final act of a grand opera. But it is a coordinated agitation, without chaos, almost like a precise choreography. Autonomous harvesters, guided by GPS signals and calibrated by productivity maps, glide through the fields as if they were extensions of the earth. They work silently, with almost robotic efficiency, but with a delicate, almost respectful touch. Each machine is capable of harvesting tons per hour, without harming the neighboring plants, without wasting a single gram. The conveyor belts function as mechanical arteries, carefully transporting the cabbages to the processing centers. And there, as in a production line governed by surgical precision, each head of cabbage is washed, inspected, weighed, and classified. What goes to direct consumption is separated from what will be industrialized or exported. Nothing is by chance. Nothing is thrown away. Everything has a destiny, a function, a purpose. In less than 24 hours, a vegetable that was firmly attached to the ground can be packaged, labeled, and ready to go, perhaps to a neighborhood market in São Paulo, or even to a sophisticated restaurant in Paris. The speed is impressive, but what is truly exciting is knowing that behind this impeccable logistics lies a much greater commitment to feed the world with quality, efficiency, and respect. This entire production chain, however technological it may be, only works because it is based on science, planning, and, above all, purpose. Today's agriculture is no longer content to produce for the sake of producing. It seeks to regenerate, preserve, and engage in dialogue with nature, rather than simply exploit it. This is the era of conscious agriculture, where the goal is not to get the most out of the land, but rather what is necessary, enough to maintain its fertility, respect its cycles, and ensure that it continues to bear fruit for many generations. Behind the growing productivity, there is research involving everything from molecular biology to genetic engineering. Crop rotation techniques prevent soil depletion, while biofertilizers feed plants naturally without harming the microorganisms that live there. Smart irrigation systems use moisture sensors to know exactly where and when water is needed. No waste, no excess. Everything is thought out, tested, adjusted. Every grain of soil is cared for as a precious commodity, because that's what it's all about, caring for the foundation that sustains all life. And the farm in our story, although it may seem futuristic, is no exception. It's part of a global movement, one of many that are reshaping the meaning of producing food on an industrial scale. On a planet where millions still face hunger every day, producing more is not just a goal, it's a humanitarian mission. Feeding bodies also means feeding hopes. Every ton of cabbage harvested is, in fact, an act of commitment to a fairer, more sustainable, more balanced world. And it's not just farmers who make this possible. There's a whole legion of professionals who orbit around modern agricultural production. Agricultural engineers who study plant behavior, mechatronics technicians who keep machines running with precision, programmers who develop software that interprets farm data, logistics operators who organize routes and deadlines, drivers who cross the country with fresh cargo, packers, distributors, market analysts. A true network that connects the countryside to the city, the seed to the plate, the farm to the world. And perhaps this is the most beautiful thing of all, realizing that the food that arrives on our table carries within itself much more than nutrients. It carries an entire universe of effort, dedication, technology, care. It carries humanity. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much we live in the age of data, machines, and automation, food still comes from the earth. And the earth, no matter how fertile it may be, only responds generously to those who treat it with respect. Therefore, as long as there are people willing to wake up before the sun, to observe the sky carefully, to put their hands in the soil with humility, there will be food, there will be hope, there will be a future. In the vastness of the farm, where the sky seems to bend over the fields like a protective mantle, something extraordinary is happening. A true, silent, almost poetic revolution that unites past and future, human sweat and artificial intelligence, intuitive sensitivity, and mathematical calculations. It is there, where everything previously depended exclusively on the strength of arms and the empirical reading of time, that a new dance is now born, the symbiosis between man and machine. And what we see in this encounter is not a duel, as many feared at first, but rather an alliance. Technology, which was once viewed with suspicion, is now integrated as an almost natural extension of human work. It did not come to replace, but to complement. To free farmers from repetitive and tiring tasks and allow them to direct their energy to what really matters, making strategic decisions, thinking in the long term, caring for the land more intelligently, and creating solutions based on concrete data and cutting-edge science. If before the farmer's eyes searched the sky for signs of rain, now they also look at the graphs and alerts that machines send in real time, without losing sight of the winds blowing in the field or the way the sun touches the leaves. This harmony, however, did not emerge overnight. It took time and courage, time to learn, to make mistakes, to test new paths, courage to change old habits, to let go of old certainties, and embrace the new with humility. The farmer who once learned from his father and grandfather to plant according